Welcome to Distracted, the podcast with Angela Lockwood, the place where you will find practical brain-boosting strategies, expert insights, and real-life stories to help busy brains thrive in the age of distraction. Let's go. Welcome to Distracted. I'm Angela Lockwood. I hope you have all been really well. Now, one of the things that I find a lot with clients that I work with is a very strong fear of speaking in public. And for me, I have never really understood that, I have to admit, because I've spoken pretty much my entire career professionally, but also, and for those of you that have been following my story for quite some time, know that I'd had a brain injury when I was 17 and told that I wouldn't ever be able to speak again. And the joke is the neurosurgeon must have hit a switch there. He mustn't have done his job well because, as we all know, I love to speak. But one of the things that I know is I always want to surround myself with people who are experts in the field. And today I'm joined by Jaimie Abbott, and she's definitely an expert in the field of communications and for helping you find your confidence as a communicator. She's from Jaimie Abbott Communications, and she's a managing director of that. And she's an expert in public speaking and media and helping you find your voice. And we're going to unpack a lot of that today. But first of all, Jaimie, welcome to Distracted.
Hey, Angela, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I sort of have to make sure that I am asking you questions on behalf of my audience, not just wanting to pick your brain for my own benefit, because I love your work. You have such an amazing, obviously an amazing way of communicating, but I love also that the work that you do in helping people find their voice really does allow people to step into who they are. And we will jump into your PR club a little bit later and also your paid to speak program. But I have this burning question for you, Jaimie. You are in this realm, but you have a very strong military background in communications and media. How do you make the leap, or have you made the leap yet, from being in military to working with business owners, corporates, and helping them find their voice?
Yeah, that's a really funny question for me because I never really feel I'm still in the Air Force Reserves. I've been in 17 years as a senior officer now, and I've never really felt that I fit the mold of a military person anyway. You know, I was full-time defense. I've done in and out of uniform as a public servant for defense as well as in uniform full-time, went to Afghanistan, and I always felt that I was not sort of cut from the same, what's that saying? Cut from the same as the rest of my counterparts there, and they would say that too. And so I definitely haven't come from a strong military background. Going into the military, I came there from journalism and politics. So I've got three main backgrounds. That's the media, that's military, that's politics, and then of course the business realm as well. And I've almost always felt, no matter what area I'm working in, that I've never really fit the mold of what I'm working in. I've always been different, and that challenges you actually. Even now, maybe it's a bit of imposter syndrome when I'm sort of in the realm of especially female entrepreneurs. I mix in those circles where I'm surrounded by a lot of incredibly successful business women, and I always feel like I'm a bit of an imposter. So I'm used to that. I'm really used to that. I just try not to think about it, and I just try and be myself and just try and achieve all I can and set goals. But if I stop and think about it too hard, I'll think, I don't belong here.
Well, I can see it. I guess this is the thing, is that you can always see as an outsider the common thread. So for you, obviously, being in military and being in the business world, communication is what's at the core. And tell me a little bit about, because I am a bit of a, I always love speaking to ex-journalists or journalists, people in the media, because as a kid, that's what I wanted to be. I had journalism down. I can remember in year 12, I was reading all the books about Sandra Sully, and all I used to get photos and really fangirl over all of these amazing people in media. But when just before I had my accident in year 12, where I did sustain my head injury, I flipped from journalism and became an occupational therapist. So I'm so fascinated by the world of journalism. But for you, you've got journalism in a military space and in a business space. So can you tell us a little bit about, and just share with us, what are some of the commonalities that you see amongst communication across those realms? And I guess, how did you find yourself there?
Yeah, great question. So I think I always love, still to this day, love finding out information first and then being the first one to report it. I mean, even now, in a really simplistic way, first thing I do when I wake up is I go onto the news sites, I check, even social media for what's making news, and I run in and I tell my partner, I'll say, the UK Prime Minister's just lost their seat or just lost the election. I love that thrill of knowing information first. And it goes right back to school. I even remember some vivid moments where there was one day there was a car accident out the front of our primary school. It was a minor accident. No one was seriously injured at all. But I remember going across the road and talking to the police and finding out what happened, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and then going back across the road and telling the teacher and all my fellow students what had happened. I just love the thrill of that. And I think that that's kind of been a consistent thing all the way, finding out information, even in an entrepreneurial sense, learning something new, whether it be about LinkedIn, social media, AI, and then reporting it back to my members. I love that. And there's two other common threads there. I think the other one is getting complex information and really dumbing it down to just the average Joe audience. I mean, when I say that, I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean, I've worked in the UN sense, military sense, political sense, where I've been given a lot of high level information that can almost go over my head. And I have the ability to be able to really simplify the messaging and the language that I then use to prepare perhaps a press release or a communication plan, or even just a piece to camera if I'm doing it in a journalism sense. And the other common thread there, I think, is, and this is something which I tell people you can use for anything, and that is the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So whenever you are putting anything out there, even if it's a 60-second piece to camera reel, all you need to do is put the who, what, when, where, why, and how, whether it's a press release, whether you're writing a blog, you're doing a podcast episode. That's what the audience wants to know. And it's always something which has worked for me, whether when I was a journalist 20 years ago or now when I'm writing a press release or I'm pitching a story to a journalist. They want to know the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And if you put all that in there, you've got your best chance of your messaging and your brand getting out there publicly.
I have so many questions from what you were just saying that I'm going to have to try to remember them all myself. What I want to know from you, so I often speak about not rolling over in the morning when you wake up, grabbing your phone and scrolling through social media. Do you do that? And how does that work for you? How do you, I guess, manage the distraction of inviting the world in? And how do you make sense of all of that?
Yeah, so I'll be the first to admit I am distracted. I'm not going to lie and say, I have these rules where no screen time, because I would just be completely lying to you. I think I probably have undiagnosed ADHD. My other half would say that. And I am in that world. I'm scrolling. I will procrastinate. I will get distracted. I'll go onto TikTok and then Reels. And then sort of watch them for hours on end. I was up last night not being able to sleep until 2 a.m. and I was watching them. But at the same time, like I know, you're very focused on not being distracted. I try and look for the positives in everything. And I think, well, that's giving me content ideas by scrolling and looking at. Now, I've got a little folder from last night when I couldn't sleep, and I've put all these reel ideas on Instagram in a folder. And even though I'm tired today, you can see I look terrible. I've got no makeup on for those who are listening to this and not watching, but yeah, so I basically think, well, I stayed up all night. I was distracted. I was scrolling, but I can put that to good use. And, I'm not an organized person either. People always say to me, because I think people look at me and they'll think, wow, you've achieved so much. And certainly most of what I've achieved was pre-kids. I've got a 4 and a 5-year-old now, and I'm 42. And so a lot of what I did achieve was before having kids. They do slow you down, especially sleep-wise, energy-wise, and just needing you all the time wise. But the fact that I have had so much, like I've achieved so much in my life, and even now I'm still achieving, on my online business, I've gone from 0 to 350K in 2 years as well. The reason I'm able to do that is because I do have high capacity. So you can give me a huge workload, I can smash through it. I will basically procrastinate, and then I will just smash through it on deadline. I think that goes back to my high school days when I would cram my study in. So that works for me. I know that works for me. Sure, I can try and be more organized. My inbox is a cluttered mess. I'm missing emails. And so sorry if you're waiting on an email back from me. I'm not perfect when it comes to that, and I'm not organized, but it works for me. And I just think that I try and get the benefits from that. So, yes, I do scroll and I do waste time, but I'm absorbing information at the same time.
Oh my gosh, I think we all scroll and we all waste time, Jaimie. You're so not alone. But what I got from that, there's such an awareness of your habits. So it sounds like you're very aware of what you do. Where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think I've really, in the last couple of years, and that's where I met you, Angela. We were in a similar mastermind. We actually met in Uluru, you and I at the airport. We'd gone to a conference with about 80 female entrepreneurs. And I think since I've really gone and dived deep into professional development, and that's really been in the last 3 years, I'm surrounded by mastermind creators. So Tina Tower is one of my business coaches. I'm in her world and her Empire Builder group. And there's always these sessions on how to get more done with less and how to get organized, how to attack your one big thing, your big hairy goal, they call it. And I think, wow, I'm not doing all this. And so I think that's where I've kind of stopped and really reflected and thought, I do need to get better. But at the same time, not beating myself up, because some of the most organized people I know are not achieving as much as they'd like to either. So I think I just try and give myself a bit of a break and sort of like at the end of the day think, okay, I could have done more, but look at all the stuff I did achieve because I didn't hold myself to a strict time slot to do a task. And so I think, yeah, in the last couple of years, I've reflected on that, but I do compare myself to other people who may not be achieving as much. And then I think, well, it's not so bad. You just got to do what works for you. And I think that hopefully that answers your question there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think so many times we look at other people and think they must have it all together.
Yes.
Like they look so organized. They've got the perfect to-do list. And I'm even very well aware of it in the work that I do that not everything works for everybody. And I often say the best strategy that works is the one that you use. Because we could get lost in all of these time management apps and distraction apps and whatever. There's so much out there. But the type of work that you do, Jaimie, you're taking, like you said, really high level, very complicated concepts and very, you've just been, as you say, working for the UN. You've worked in military. I'd imagine having very big access to information that not many other people would. Tell us a little bit about what you do. If you are a distracted brain, how do you, and what are some of those habits that you do have to distill some of that information into that really clearly articulated message that you go, yep, I've got it and I can deliver it clearly? What are some of those habits that you have? Or if you don't, how do you do it?
Yeah, so I think I sort of touched on it before with the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And,
Mm.
that absolutely gets me through life. So I could be sitting in a really complex briefing. I've just come from Jamaica where I was working for the International Seabed Authority, which is a UN agency. And the Secretary General there, the ISA, would deliver a really complex high level brief, which would honestly go over my head. My mind does drift. And I think about other things like my social life, what I'm doing that night, what I did last night. And I don't have a really focused brain. So I think then I'll come back to it and I'll just think, okay, for me to communicate this message on whatever project we're talking about, all I need is the who, what, when, where, why, and how. I don't need all these offshoot complex information that perhaps the lawyers need or the scientists need. I just need to know what the average Joe on the street needs to know. And that's the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The other thing I think is, and this is something for a lot of communication professionals, you need to not be afraid to ask stupid questions. You have to have the confidence to do that. And that has challenged me over the years. I've got a big ego. I've gone into the military and I've asked questions which I've been laughed at for asking. But I have to ask those questions because if I'm communicating a press release or a story in the media and in the public, they're going to ask those questions. So I need to make sure I can understand it to be sort of the conduit between the complex subject matter expert and the public. And I always try and think, if I was talking to my 90-year-old grandmother about this subject, what would I say? How would I communicate it? And I always keep that in the back of my mind. And a lot of communication professionals, or anyone who's sort of writing any sort of content, they do struggle with this. I've worked alongside many along the years who are too scared to speak up and ask questions because they think, what if they laugh at me because I should have maybe understood that, or maybe they've already mentioned that, but I tuned out. And so I have to just back myself and say, sorry, you might have already mentioned this, but can you just clarify? And then I have been ridiculed, but at the end of the day, I just push through that because I'm going to have the best product that I produce that I can communicate as a PR media professional, and being able to kind of cut through the noise, so to speak.
Yeah, gosh, that's such a great point, because how many times do we hear people that they say, I didn't wanna ask," or,
Yeah.
that they're sitting there and they just don't wanna look silly, but
Mm.
actually it ends up being more work for them. And I know I even say this to my own kids: if you don't understand what your teacher said, ask, because you're gonna come home and you're gonna do all the homework and it's gonna be marked wrong. All you needed to do was ask in the first place. And do you
Mm.
think that comes from a place of confidence, for people to be able to back themselves? Or is it the fear of what other people might think?
Yeah, well, I feel like I've learned the hard way when it comes to this. So I even remember, Angela, when I was in high school, and do you remember mock trials?
Yeah,
Did you ever
I
do mock trials?
do.
Yeah. I remember I was involved in that. I was in debating and mock trials. Anyway, I was being cross examined, and it was a case, and I don't remember the details of the case, but I do remember one part of the case where it talked about long johns. Long johns. You know, the long johns that you wear? I didn't know what
Like
they were.
thermal, like
Yeah, I did.
thermal.
Yeah, yeah. I did not know what they were. And I didn't ask because everyone seemed to be talking about these long johns. And, there was no Google back then. So I just went up on this mock trial cross examination box in this pretend court. And they asked me to describe what I was wearing, and it was long johns. And of course, I described something completely different. And I was made a fool. And I remember that really clearly, actually. The opposition laughed at me, my own team laughed at me and criticized me. And I remember thinking at that moment, from now on, I'm just going to ask the dumb questions that they might laugh at me, but who cares? I'd rather get it over and done with behind the scenes than putting something out there publicly. And so I think situations like that, where I've gone through that, means I don't want to make that mistake again. I was a politician, and I would sometimes nail my media interviews or my public presentations. Other times I didn't, because I didn't quite meet the messaging. I didn't really research the topic enough. And so I think going through those experiences, I now know what not to do and what to do. And that includes asking all the questions up front, asking the silly questions, asking the left field questions, asking questions that I think the average person may want to know. And when I'm coming up against, I should say, senior military personnel, senior UN people like the Secretary General over in Jamaica that I was working for, it can be really intimidating. It really can. And I just have to back myself, because at the end of the day, they're going to be seeing the final product that I produce as a result of a meeting or an interview I'm doing with them, and it has to meet the mark. So I've always got that end product in mind.
Hmm. So for people that are listening that really are quite fearful, or they're not confident in their communication, so whether or not it's in the workplace, whether or not they do have positions on boards that they're going, I feel like a bit of an imposter, how can they back themselves? How can they, you mentioned that you back yourself. What could that look like for them?
Yeah, so rehearsal, I think, is one of those things. Going in and being as prepared as possible. I think a lot of the time we have very common fears, and the number one fear is rejection. Really, it's the same with public speaking, going into any situation, even a social networking event. I would say, in my experience, the clients that I work with, the number one fear is fear of rejection. And that can take many forms, basically being dismissed, being ignored, not being taken seriously, people not being interested in you. And I think if you can kind of role play and rehearse and prepare for the worst situation, then it's going to help you to back yourself. And what I mean by that is, if you walk into a room and you don't know anybody, how are you going to handle that? Have you got someone that you may know going? You're going to meet someone out the front. Have you got some questions prepared? If you get asked a question that might be a bit left field, what are you going to say? And I even do that because, we've at the moment, we've just gone through this thing in New South Wales where the Liberal Party didn't put in the right form, didn't put in the forms, the Electoral Commission for dozens of candidates across New South Wales. My husband was one of them. And so he's missed out now on the opportunity to be on council for the next 4 years. And we've done council between us for 7 years. It's a big part of our life. And he's devastated. And that was 2 weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago as we're recording this. And I've had to go to so many events since then, including as an MC. And I knew people were going to come up to me, and people from the other side of politics who have got many friends at all different sides, people from my side, general public people wanting to know, how's Matt doing? How are you doing? How did this happen? How could this happen? And I needed to be prepared for that. I was at an event last week, emceeing a charity event, and I knew people would come up to me as soon as I got off the stage, and they did. And so I needed to be prepared with what I was going to say rather than just going, oh, we're so angry. I had to kind of rehearse that in my head. And I think that if many people can do that who may not be as confident as what I am now, that's definitely going to help you.
I wish so many people could listen to that. I hope so many people listen to this interview. If only people thought before they spoke, Jaimie.
It sounds so easy and obvious, doesn't it?
Oh, look, it's easy, but it's not a common thing, is it?
No, no.
And even just for this interview, they're doing the background research on you and your work, the work you've done, and what is it that listeners want to hear. I think little things like that really make a big difference, even for relationships. Do you find that?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I think that's where we underestimate sometimes that the whole process. People worry too much about being front and center with somebody, or they're worried about how the other person will perceive them rather than the message that they're trying to send and what they're trying to share. But that is 100% your expertise. What I do want to just touch on before we finish up, Jaimie, is the role of AI in communication. For people that are listening to this, mostly people who are very heavily involved in education or they're in corporate positions. Oh my gosh, I just got back from EduTech conference, which was about AI in education, and a big part of that was communication and learning. I would love to know from you, what have you seen, or how have you seen the role of AI so far impact on people's communication? Is it a good thing, or isn't it, or is it a mix of both?
I certainly have embraced AI. There's no doubt about that. And that's something I teach my PR club members to do when they're producing content. But big caveat there, I can totally see online now so many people who are using ChatGPT just to use their captions. It has no voice, no personality. And so I definitely encourage you to build your own ChatGPTs by inputting all the previous content you may have written. So transcripts of podcasts. So the transcript of this podcast today, I will then punch that into ChatGPT, because it's then going to start speaking like me and using the word, style, tone that I use. And so I definitely think that if you don't use it, then you're going to fall behind because your competitors are using it. It's very noisy online in the marketing space. Now, whether you're an online business owner or not, you still got to promote yourself online, and your competitors will be using it, and they'll be getting more content out there much quicker than you. However, you just don't want to use it just to copy and paste and just use the bots without having that real personality. So you can inject your own stories into AI. And I think that that's where you can get that sweet spot by using the technology, but you definitely have to have your own voice and your own style. Otherwise, your audience will know. I think by now, my audience would know if I just use ChatGPT to write something without my own voice being in it and the own words that I use. There's certain words that I would never use. And I think if I put that in there, people would know that, particularly people who followed me for a while. So definitely encourage AI use for marketing and PR, but use it with caution and make sure that it's speaking like you speak.
I love that because it's putting your personality into the technology. I laugh now when you see content that's released and there's so many emojis in it. Like there are, and you know that ChatGPT has written it because ChatGPT in my world seems to love a good emoji. There are so many emojis. Or the Z here in Australia, we don't use the Z, we use the S, and I just see so many. So many words being used with a Z in it, and
Mhm.
I laugh at these things, and I guess that's the stuff people need to look out for, right? That make sure that your voice
Absolutely.
is a part of it. Yeah, yeah. Now,
Yeah, for
Jamie,
sure.
I know you have some really great online programs, and there's so much more I think we could have spoken about, but I really just want to point people to your work. And you mentioned PR Club, and that's at prclub.com.au. Can you share a little bit about that, but also your paid to speak course? Because I know I work with a lot of executives, and the confidence to be able to speak as a part of their leadership role is really important for them. And believe it or not, and I'm sure you're very well aware of this, but our listeners may not be, a lot of the leaders in big organizations aren't very confident in their communication ability or being able to stand. And it's a real skill that they need to learn. So I'd love to know, what can people learn from you, Jaimie, in your PR Club program, but also your paid to speak program?
Yeah, well, my pay to speak program to start with is my signature course, and that teaches you how to become a highly paid speaker. So it's a self study course, plus has some live coaching elements in it with me as well. And you learn how to find highly paid speaking gigs, how to pitch to them, how much to charge, how to get into the speaker bureaus, government agencies who often have huge budgets. And so that course now, I've had over 180 people go through it over the last 2 years, many of whom are getting incredible results. And I'm talking 10K plus per speaking gig when they weren't charging at all beforehand. So it basically gives you everything you need to know to start becoming a paid speaker. From there, I have my membership, which is PR Club, and that is open all the time, as you said, at prclub.com.au. About half of the students, we've got about 75 students in there now, or members. Half of them have come from paid to speak, where they just kind of want that accountability and that live coaching with me every single month. We do a different topic every month, and that's anything from how to pitch to the media, how to use LinkedIn. This month, we've done how to get your book published quickly. Next month's TikTok, and then we're doing LinkedIn again because LinkedIn's changed. There's media contacts in there, how to get corporate clients. So half of the people in there have done the course and just want to keep promoting themselves. The other half are time poor business owners who don't have a lot of time to be spending in master classes and masterminds. They just want quick wins. So if they don't get a chance to watch the live session, they can watch the recording or just take the templates, which has often got contacts, done for you, swipe copy and all that sort of thing. Amazon book templates, for example, this month I gave away. And so I'm really proud of that. It's over 20 years of experience in media and communications. Everything in my head just spilled out. And I'm so proud of it because I look at the people who are in it and, gosh, they're so much more successful than me, so many of them. And I think, wow, I'm so honored to have you in here and I'm teaching you how to do your own PR. It's an absolute honor.
Well, I will definitely link all of those both of those programs in any way that you can connect in with Jaimie. But I really encourage you, if you are not confident in your communication, and if communication is a real core part of your work, don't feel overwhelmed by it. And I think hopefully by speaking with Jaimie today, you've really can grasp that even with AI, even with the overwhelm of information, you are still at the core of it. And knowing what you want to communicate is really important. So, Jaimie, I thank you so much for sharing your story here on Distracted, and also just being able to provide such a fantastic resource to people who often feel like their voice isn't heard.
Oh, thanks, Angela. I really appreciate the opportunity for having me on. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Jaimie. So, if you know somebody also who's having, I guess, difficulty or wanting to develop in the space of communication, please forward this episode to them. Let them know, because Jaimie really is the expert and the leader in this field. So, head on over to jaimieabbott.com.au or at Jaimie Abbott on all of the social media platforms. But I'm Angela Lockwood. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody. And until next time, stay safe and enjoy.